Welcome to Q2, the Questions, Queries podcast.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first Questions, Queries podcast. I have with me a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, known as Pepe. He's got a lovely full name, and I'll let him introduce himself with it.
Well, my full name is José Alberto De Hoyos Ramos. José Alberto is actually my first two names. Much like you have Sam something else? Are you something else?
I'm Samuel Azariah.
Samuel what?
Azariah.
Azariah.
Yeah.
Is that a Bible name, Azariah?
It is Hebrew, yes.
Hebrew, right. Oh, cool.
Can you still hear yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So do you have some kind of Jewish connection? Or?
I don't have a Jewish connection. I think my mum once talked about us having like a Jewish connection through like a gypsy thing. I don't know. I actually think because my initials are SAM. And so Azariah was just like my mum flicking through a name book and being like,
through the phone book.
Cool. But props to mum because I'm a big fan of that name.
That's a cool name.
It is a cool name.
I never knew your name was that.
Samuel Azariah.
Yeah.
Azariah. Yeah. It's interesting. I actually don't know if I pronounce it correctly. I don't know if it's Azaria or Azariah. So
kind of sounds like a rapper.
If there's any Jewish people listening to this, let me know. But yeah, man. Okay, so what I find like super interesting about you, and just to sort of clarify to everyone, Pepe and I, well, let's do a backstory about each other and how we know each other and stuff.
Yes.
So Pepe and I met at a place called NZME, which is a workplace. It's a media company in New Zealand, and I was an editor, and you were a camera operator, and it was just love at first sight. We talked about, well, maybe not, but we talked about martial arts, and we started training together at CKB, and then we started making some sort of films together. We made some stuff for the Herald, and it was really fun. And
yes, it was.
We're going to try and make some more shit this year.
That's right.
So tell us about your profession, Pepe.
Well, I am a camera operator by trade. Mm-hmm. So I am in the business of making pretty pictures with a camera and with a lens. Yeah, it's pretty simple, but that's what I like doing because I get to meet interesting people every day. I get to tell cool stories to people, and I just get to go to interesting places. And yeah, I would much rather do that than just being stuck behind a desk or counting numbers or counting things at supermarkets. Like, I have no disrespect for all those jobs, but I love my job. I really, really love what I do. So yeah, it's great to be working in cameras.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's real cool. And so you are a native from Mexico. Yeah.
That's correct.
And so how long have you been in New Zealand?
Well, residing here maybe since 2007. So yeah, it's quite a while now. It's
11 years.
It's gonna come up to, well, if you count the year that I was here studying, because I was in 2005 studying in Unitec in Auckland. That makes 12 years almost plus now that I've been here. Yeah. I'm a permanent resident, and I've been pretty lucky to have traveled around the world a lot, but yet I know, for me, this is the most beautiful country in the world. Seriously, New Zealand is a very, very special place. And if somebody's listening to this outside of the country and they've never been to New Zealand, you should make the effort to come here sometime. And it's the greatest. You'll find out why.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's cool that it's so special to you.
It is, man. Yeah.
So what was it that, like, what is the defining thing about New Zealand that when you were, going overseas and stuff and you studied here and you came back, like, what was it that made you come back?
It was actually a relationship. I got into a relationship back then when I was in my first year in New Zealand when I was studying here. I met this girl and, we fell in love. We just got into this relationship. She was from down south, from around Christchurch. And we had a pretty good spell. And we were heading in the right direction, but, life happens and a few things get complicated, and then it didn't turn out. But by this stage, we already spent together 4 years plus, But initially, if I want to backtrack from that, when I first came to New Zealand in 2005, the reason why I came here was studying. So I got offered this opportunity of doing a double degree in communication.
Sure.
I was studying the communication major back home in Mexico, in Monterrey, one of the biggest cities in the country. It's located in North Mexico, just maybe about 3 hours south of Texas.
Sure.
And so they offered me this opportunity. They said to me, we're going to send you 1 year overseas, and you have the option of choosing London or Auckland, New Zealand. And I was just thinking, shit. I mean, that's a really interesting choice. At this stage, I'd already been to Europe maybe twice or 3 times before in my life. Never been to London before. When I got given that choice, and I thought, you know what? If I keep traveling in my life, which I will because I want to, I'm going to end up in London at some point. But New Zealand just seems so remote, so far away from anywhere.
It's part of the charm, right?
Totally, man.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, shit, you know, I don't know nothing about New Zealand. Like, I honestly, the only thing I knew about it was that the Lord of the Rings was filmed here.
It's funny how, like, that is a thing. Like, everyone sort of gets New Zealand from Lord of the Rings.
Seriously.
It's weird, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. I'm just going to get this mic, like, a little bit further in front of you. I'll let you adjust it, but I think it's a bit too far off the side. Because when you're talking into it, you sound fantastic.
So,
Yeah.
is that better?
There we go.
Yeah. So Lord of the Rings, I watched those films, and I have to say I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of
Yeah.
narrative or storytelling. But the
You can
locations,
also,
man.
also pull this out, by the way. Like, it's maneuverable.
Sweet.
So you can get it right. Like a phallus, you know?
Exactly like that.
Spit some bars, and let's launch a rap career here and now.
I don't think it's going to happen. So where was I? Oh yeah, I watched Lord of the Rings, and I really liked the locations of the film.
Yes.
You know, it just looked amazing, and I thought I just wanted to go there.
It's interesting, yeah, because
Go there.
London's such like a, I mean, for Kiwis especially, like it's that mecca that everyone sort of goes over to, and
OE
and yeah, well, it's like it's seen as such a big, like an advantageous thing for your career. So
Yeah.
for you to,
I mean, it's got to be right. Like you go to the heart of Europe, and you're buzzing.
I would like to go back to a story that you once told me about the mariachi.
Oh yes,
Is that how you pronounce it?
mariachi.
Mariachi.
Mariachi. That's correct.
Yeah.
So, since the age of 12, I picked up playing the guitar as an instrument, and I think music has been a big part of my life since a very young age. I'd always liked singing and playing guitar and just being in bands and stuff. So when I was 14, I auditioned for this group. This is back home in Mexico, in my hometown, Saltillo, and I had this audition to become a guitarist of a mariachi band. And I'm not sure if you've seen what the mariachi bands look like or what they sound like, but it is just fucking outrageous. It's great music, man. It's going to... Every time they arrive in a party, the mariachis, they just lift the party up. But they can also bring a mood so somber and, you know, dramatic.
Yeah.
They have like really heartfelt songs. They'll fucking make you cry, man.
That's so interesting because, like, in my exposure to mariachi bands, which I assume is most, is just like the token movie when they just sort of like wander in and
well,
like,
yes, yes, and there is some truth to that.
Yeah,
there is some truth, but I think you were looking at a Hollywood looking glass version of what a mariachi really is. There are some people that, for example, they dedicate their whole lives into playing this kind of music, and they go to study in conservatories, and I mean it's quite serious. When you go on YouTube and you Google, when you go on YouTube and you search for the best mariachis in the world, holy shit! I mean, I can be watching that for hours, man, hours, and it's everything from the way they're dressed. You know, they always come out with their big sombreros and all these black or brown with shiny suits, you know.
Shiny suits.
Well, they have all these like things. I don't really know the word in English. We call them galas in Spanish, but they just kind of hang from their suits on the sides and in the arms.
No, tassels. Is that
Probably.
yeah?
Shit,
I mean, I'm
don't
gonna
know.
move this beer because I just noticed that I'm probably just like sticking my hand in front of your face every time that I'm trying to get a drink break.
So tassels. I'm not sure if it's a tassel, but it's. I don't know. It just looks really good. The costume looks amazing, and the music, man. I was in it for the music. It was so good to be playing the music that represents my country, and it's a very big country. I'm not sure if you know how big it is, but it's huge. I mean, 120 million people. It's got so much history. in a country that big, there's got to be different regions. Much like in New Zealand, you get your Canterbury, Northland, and so on.
We're
and so
very
on, and so on.
New Zealand's diversification is pretty minor.
It's 4 million people.
Yeah.
So the scale of the
Yeah.
population here is like 4 million compared to 120.
Mm.
Over in Mexico, you get the different accents of each region. You get different ways of speaking, slang. I mean, it's massive. The country is really, really big, and the music is so diverse in each one of these regions as well.
Well, I think part of that is also like attributed to those groups being there for that period of time as well, like, and having that isolation, that ability to form its own culture. Like, that's in terms of New Zealand, we are fucking X amount of years old. What, 250?
It's a young country. It's a young country.
So we haven't had the same time and experience to formulate the same thing. But anyway, please continue your story.
So yeah, each region of Mexico has its own style of music, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the mariachi that I was playing in, we were taking the highlights of each one of the regions, and then we put together a show.
Mm-hmm.
And one part of the show was the music, and then we had an ensemble of dancers, or rather a group of dancers that would perform dances for these songs, all dressed up according to the state or region that would be performing in the music, right?
Okay.
So the whole thing, dancers and musicians, came together as an ensemble, a folkloric ensemble, that then we took to Europe. We traveled the world. I did it 3 times with this group. And they carried on. Like I quit the group, and everybody else carried on. Still up to this day, they're still touring each year. They go into Europe and they go to this incredible festivals. And honestly, that's some of the best times in my life. And I owe it all to music, to just go out there. When I was 14, I was very lucky to go to France, representing Mexico, playing the guitar.
Wow.
And I spent a month and a half in France, and it made me, I suppose, really independent. I never had the experience of leaving my country with no parents and no family, just with a whole bunch of randoms that all you have in common is your love for music and dancing, I guess. And we're just exploring the old continent together.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you went through like Russia and shit as well, right?
I went to Russia. I spent about 5-6 weeks in Russia.
That's so cool.
2 weeks in a region on the top of Russia called Arkhangelsk. Arkhangelsk, we had this it's a weird experience because we were so far up north. During the summer, they had 24 hours of daylight. So we had just daylight for like 10 odd days or 14 odd days. And at the beginning, it was like really cool. Everybody was like, wow, have you ever seen this? This is amazing. This is like nothing else we've seen before. But then after a day or two,
you wanted to go
like,
to sleep.
Oh man, it fucks with your head. Like I'm telling you, it fucks with your head. That you're leaving a bar at 2 a.m. and it looks like it's 2 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, it is like that. And during the winter, they have the opposite thing. So it's all nighttime. And what I've read is that countries that get this during the winter, they have higher suicide rates and depression.
Well, with Norway and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Very similar thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's quite dramatic, really, what daylight plays in your head.
Yeah, well, I guess it's like indicative of weather and everything. Like people from the UK are just grumpy.
Yeah,
because
Russians are grumpy.
Joking, UK, but no, we're quite blessed here. I think with our weather in New Zealand, like we kind of have like
Why
are we blessed?
Yeah.
Well, I like the weather here. I think it's nice. Like I think it doesn't get Australia hot, which is too hot in my opinion. But we don't get crazy cold. We get wet, but I like it.
Yeah, just a lot of people have the impression that New Zealand is always going to be a green paradise with unicorns flying in the sky and like 4 rainbows each way you look.
You don't see that?
Well,
you need to take more acid.
The reality, like most days in the summer, you'll be driving out and there'll be rain at some point. Or there was a time when my mate came to visit from Mexico, and most of the time that he was here during our summer in New Zealand, he had just rain every day.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. It does suck, but it's not too abnormal.
No, you don't visit the North Island in the winter. That's it's a recipe for
that's cool
being grumpy.
But yeah, fuck talking about weather.
Hey, That's the time-old tradition.
Let me tell you more about the mariachi. Like
Yes.
this band that I was in actually gave me a whole bunch of really good experiences and really solidified my love for music. That's what I was doing every single day. So we would be traveling in big buses with a whole bunch of people, and in trajectories of I don't know, like sometimes 24 hours in a bus, sometimes 30 hours in a bus or in a train. I had nothing else to do apart from just playing music and just talking to people. So I would just do that. So there was a time, maybe when I was like 16 or 17, that I actually got really good at the guitar. Like I was just jamming all the time, every day. And when I was overseas, I was doing it even more so. And that opened up a whole lot of doors, and I made a lot of friendships because of that. Sometimes you go to a country in which you wouldn't speak their language, and there was no other language to communicate in. I don't know, like I spent a bit of time in Bulgaria and met up with people that didn't speak English or Spanish or nothing in common, so we couldn't talk, but yet they would play a piano or a guitar. You could still sit there comfortably drinking beers for about an hour and just jamming in our instruments. That's the greatest value of it, you know? It's like a bit of a universal language.
That's interesting. It's an interesting take on music to have that element to it.
Totally.
Do you think, because what I find interesting as well is sort of as you're saying this, there's like almost a bit of crossover to like that real interest in people that you had when you were, going around and communicating, meeting these interesting individuals. There's like a crossover to where you are now in your current profession and what you could like to sort of do. And like when you're working in Focus, like NZ Hero Focus was one of Pepe's jobs when he was NZ and that was just capturing stories and stuff as well. And so I wonder if like, I guess it always is, but like your earlier experiences in the mariachi band and traveling Europe and stuff like that, did that kind of influence you to go and study communications and then go into...
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so because I think I found that from an early age, from when I was really young, that I had an interest in other people. And that's something that has always fascinated me, just knowing your story. I want to know where you come from. I want to know what you've done before. And the more different that your story is to mine, the more I appreciate that story. The more I don't know. I get mind blown when people tell me their life experience and it's just completely different in terms of culture or like upbringing to the one that I had. I just find it really interesting.
Yeah, and I have a similar thing. But what fascinates me is how complex people are.
Yeah.
Like how many layers there are to different individuals. Because we just look at people and we assume things about them and that's confirmation bias or whatever it is. Like that's innately how we are. But it's so interesting, like figuring out how people got to where they are and why.
It is, but you have to ask, man. A lot of people just assume many things, or a lot of people are just shy to ask, But if you'd be surprised how much people would be willing to share with you if you only just approach and ask them one question. A lot of people actually will talk to you about their very intimate personal shit if you ask the right way, Because a lot of the time we just want to be heard. We just want to communicate. We're social beings, So somebody showing interest in what it is that you're doing it's like it feels really good, Somebody asking you, tell me about your day, and they're genuinely interested about this. Then they tell you all this stuff. And 80% of my job comes from that. Comes from sitting down with somebody or making somebody feel comfortable in an environment that would otherwise be very uncomfortable. Like shooting somebody with a camera in their house and they've never seen me, they've never seen them before. And I'm just rocking in with a camera, putting it in front of them with a microphone on top, and just going, okay, now tell me about this.
Yeah.
Most people would just freeze on the spot.
Well, like putting a camera in front of people has that effect, eh?
Yeah, it's just the whole thing of self-awareness, like you have to really detach from that. I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm having that internal battle at the moment.
Are you?
Yeah. I constantly have that.
Forget about it.
Where you kind of go inwards and you're constantly like, I personally, I'm worrying about how I'm being perceived right now and how I'm talking and the questions and you have that internal dialogue, but you have to
just let go a wee bit,
Yeah, and that's like, I love that. That's mindfulness, really, isn't it? And I love that kind of philosophy and that you try to calm your mind and
it's
just
good.
embrace the moment.
Yeah. But what about you? You come from Whangarei, right?
You don't want to know about me, mate.
Surely you can say a nice thing.
Well, yeah, no, maybe.
No?
Nah, Whangarei. Whangarei it's an interesting place. The older I get, the more I like it. You know, and it was actually last time that I was there. I went up for work for a few days last week, and it was the only time that I've ever felt like coming back and, you know, setting up shop sort of thing. Like, because so we're in Auckland at the moment, and like trying to buy a house or, you know, set up here is
fucking impossible. I mean, but for our age, and for those who don't know, Whangarei is a city that's about 3 hours north of Auckland in New Zealand.
2 hours.
2 hours, he says. He speeds a lot.
You can also do it in like 1:45.
Oh God, I feel like a pussy now.
Radar detector. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. Northland, New Zealand is really, really
it's
nice.
amazing. It's horrible in winter. It's very, very wet. It's very tropical, and it's getting like I find that New Zealand's getting more tropical. Feels like that way, at least climate change and all that sort of jazz. But no, so it was an interesting place. Like I think it's a place where you raise kids because you can afford a house and it's simple. And I do think there's something to be said for, because we're in the rat race here. You know, like we're hustling, and especially in our industries, we're freelancers and we have to maintain relationships is really, really important. And, you know, you can't just sort of coast. You have to be part of this big thing, and, you know, you travel every day. But this is where the work is, and this is where if you want to get into a successful career, you need to base yourself in a place like this. There's also much as, that's at least how I perceive it. But going home, everything's slower, you know, and it's 10 minutes to get to work, and it's, you know, and for me, like my dream is to have a dog and some kids and
You can already do that.
Why don't I do that?
You can already do it. You know?
I could do that. My partner would certainly like me to do that.
Oh yeah.
Nah.
Oh, there you go.
Nah. You know, getting a dog and having a few acres and by the bush and stuff like that would be amazing.
Right. Yeah.
But for me, you know, it's about getting stuff done. But this is not an interview about me, Pepe. We have a dramatic table.
And they just like turn around. Yeah. Check this out.
It's very dramatic.
It is. When you say a boss fucking statement, just go like.
If you're listening to this as opposed to watching to this, we're literally just drinking beers and putting them on a table. And for whatever reason, my DIY podcast studio has some reverb problems.
It's a pretty cool DIY podcast studio, I gotta say, man. I'm very impressed with your efforts here. Very impressed.
Thank you kindly.
I want to.
It's all for you.
I know it's not an interview about you, but I want to make it a little bit about you. I want you to tell me what this is. What do you plan to get to with this podcast? Like, what's the intention behind this?
I think the intention behind this podcast and the Questions Queries podcast, is what I've now named it, is that I really like having conversations with people. Much like you, I enjoy trying to find out what makes people tick and what motivates them. And so Pepe and I did a couple of stories last year. One on a MMA fighter called Ev Ting, who is...
Shout out!
He's amazing, and he's doing very, very well. He's in a promotion called...
One Championship.
Yeah, not One SE.
One Championship.
I got in trouble with that. But yes, no, so we got to do that, and it was amazing. And then we got to do a story on a girl called Maria. And fucking shout out to Maria, she's awesome. Doing stuff with sexual violence, and that was amazing, and I really enjoyed that. But you do have to spend a lot of time, and especially as we don't get paid for that kind of crap. You know, we're just doing it for the love. And why I still
There's a lot of love in there.
There is a lot of love for that, and why I still want to make that. You know, it's a time thing. It's just it takes when you've got trying to do full-time work as well as coming home and you know how it is. Like I imagine it's
bro.
Drinking beers after a protein shake. It's fucking me up. So much like I imagine camera operating is with editing, you know, if you edit all day and you got to come home and edit, it's rough. It's real rough. So
man, how do you get yourself into that? Just editing?
Just
like a footage butcher. That's what you are. Well, not you specifically. I'm talking about editors in general.
Well, no, this is part of it, man. So that's the first half of the point is that it's easier to make a longer form piece of content, and we can sit down, hit record, and it doesn't take me long to compile it all and and spit it out. But the other side of things is that as an editor or director, you craft a narrative. So the information that you're receiving from this piece of content, be it, you know, a documentary or a news piece or whatever, is crafted to tell a certain narrative, because that's what the director wants you to see. And if there's no director, the editor will often take, you know, the grabs of the interview and they'll figure out how to put it and they'll craft a story. And I appreciate that, but I also I really appreciate podcast content. And
Right.
I mean, the blueprint for this for me is Joe Rogan podcast, and I'm trying to steer it clear as soon as possible, because I'm real into MMA and you know, and I don't want to be...
Let's do some DMT, bro.
Yeah, bro. But no, I don't want to be that. But
Such an intense guy.
He is a fucking amazing guy. But I you know, that's inspired me to try and do some longer form stuff. And I think it'd be interesting. So I'm just going to pick people, be they, you know, friends of mine like yourself, that are interesting folk, or, you know, there's people that I'd love to reach out to and just have chats to kind of get a bit more of a basis around who they are.
Well, you know some really interesting people, so I'm looking forward to. I look forward to hearing more of the content that you make here. It's going to be awesome, bro.
Well, thank you, my bro.
It's going to be awesome.
So, in spirit of what I'm trying to do here, in terms of format-wise, is that I kind of wanted to do like a... Are you getting another beer? Totally. Oh, give me one too, bro. Hang on, we're just in the beer breaks. Anyway, what was I talking about?
You said in spirits of something?
Yes. So I'm going to be trying to do a past, present, future kind of thing. And I think that's an interesting way to break something down. And so I'd like to explore a little bit more of your past, because we've kind of been into your present.
Go on.
So growing up, where did you grow up? And how was it growing up as a young man in Mexico? Once upon a time in Mexico.
It was great. I had a really, really good childhood. I was born in a town called Saltillo, which is in the north of Mexico.
Sure.
And I'd say, I mean, it's 1 million people living there. So by Mexican standards, it's a small city. But it's nice, you know, we just had lots of fun things to do there. Mainly just every day playing football in the street with the neighbors, going to school and... hanging out with my mates, and I have some very, very close friends of mine there. And my family, I'm close to my family. I don't know. It was just a good place to grow up in, you know. I went to school. I discovered music. I got into sports. All my life, I've played sports. I'm very keen on football. I really enjoy watching boxing, MMA stuff, but it was mainly football and basketball when I was young.
Sure.
A kid.
Basketball.
Yeah, I used to play a bit of basketball. You know, I'm not that tall, so it's kind of weird for me to, like, a strange sport to pick up. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, what else can I'm an only child. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so my upbringing was one that I'm not gonna say I was trying to replace a figure of a brother or sister in my life, but the friends that I took in Mexico as part of my circle of friends, I was always very close to them. So I always treated my friends generally as if they were brothers of mine, you know. And yeah, I have plenty of friends as a result of that. I like to think of myself as a social person and animated, and I want to... No, just a fucking asshole.
Sorry, I like to tease Pepe.
Yeah, no, it's good.
No, anyways, please continue. So you have friends back there.
I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I went to school. I moved on to uni. I went to a different town called Monterrey.
Yeah.
Big city in the north, just about an hour up north from my hometown, Saltillo. Monterrey is one of the biggest cities in the country. 5 million people live there. 2 massive football teams. One of which is the team that I support, Tigres, in Monterrey. Campeones 6 veces, cabrones 6 veces. Muy bien.
Go the mighty Tanifa. They're not mighty, but continue.
So, yeah, shit. Then I came to New Zealand, and I'm stuck. Well, what else can I tell you about my
Well, I'm
my
kind of
past?
curious. So are you, in terms of socioeconomic, when you grew up, were you from, like, how was your family placed?
So, I would say when I was born, my mom and dad were part of a lower mid-class layer. Mexico is a country that that is it's a poor country in general. 50% of the population lives in poverty, and that's quite a high number.
Yeah,
if you think of like 120 million, that's heaps of people. So the middle class layer is like any other country in ways of development or third world country. Hate using that word, but the middle class gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner.
Sure.
My parents, I think, they were from like a hardworking lower middle class. So my dad, who is a businessman, he opened up a restaurant. He started from not much. He was just selling fish door to door.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he just worked himself up and up and up and up, and then all of a sudden he gathered a little bit of money, and he opened up like a little food truck, like a car outside a church. Mexico people are so religious. If you're going to sell anything, go to a church on a Sunday. The numbers, I mean, you will sell anything.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
bruh.
Cool.
Bruh. My dad went and sold fish and also like shrimp cocktails, like little simple things that he'll prepare.
Sure.
But it was quite niche at the time because we come from a desert area of Mexico. If you just imagine Texas and you see in films how everything looks so dry and like bone dry desert, that's where the city is located. So far away from the ocean, yet he's selling fish.
Wow.
So people were just really interested in the product, and he was selling and selling and selling, and then he was doing well with this. So he bought a little. No, he didn't buy. He started renting a shop where he put his restaurant there, and then he opened it up to the public. And then since then, it's been 30 odd years past. And it's booming. Now it's like he has 3 branches in the city. Every time you drive past there, it's like a queue outside of the door.
Wow.
Every single day. It's crazy. He's done so well for himself.
That's awesome.
In this restaurant, yeah. So, why was I going with this? Shit, I don't know.
You were just telling about your upbringing, man.
Oh, yeah.
Lowest is economic and
yeah.
low to mid.
Oh, yeah. So, right. Exactly. So, after the restaurant started picking up and doing well, I suppose my family moved from a lower mid-class into more of a higher mid-class. But in Mexico, when you see the actual high class, the higher class is like in many other countries that are from the group of the third world countries, the rich people are really fucking rich.
Yeah, it's another level, eh?
You have people like Carlos Slim. I think a few years ago, he was named the richest man in the world.
Wow.
He owns telecommunication companies, hospitals, like, so much. He's really rich. So yeah, my family comes from somewhere in the middle.
It's good.
Hardworking family.
Yeah.
It is good to come from the middle. Yes.
Yeah.
Hardworking family, and I've been, I guess, very lucky to always have had an interest in languages and learning something different. And I started learning English when I was young. My first language is Spanish, coming from Mexico. I started learning English, and I found it very interesting. I actually really enjoyed the English lessons and listening to music in English and watching films in English. It was kind of like a door. It was like opening a door into a new culture, different cultures in the world. It was deciphering a code that would get you inside a culture or somebody's brain. It's the cultural discount of speaking a different language and translating. Cultural discount and translation is massive sometimes. When you see a movie that is dubbed, it loses so much of its meaning. But when you can understand its native language and you can see it and you can connect with the actors a lot more or get the story in a much better way. So I was very lucky that I always paid attention in English class, and I just took it upon myself with the help of my parents, to study more English, and yeah.
I love that way of looking at it though, like a code to decipher.
It's exactly what it is, man. Languages are codes. That's all they are. It's a code, It's a way that you're encoding something. If you understand this code, then you have a way to decipher it. You have a way to decode it. Yet if you don't understand it, it's like you have no means of working it out.
That's one of the great sort of tragedies, I think, with our education system is that we don't, and I think a lot of Anglo-Saxon, I suppose, we don't. America does a bit with Spanish, and I imagine UK might do a bit more, but we don't do fuck all. Hopefully we do more today.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important to do that. And if it's just to keep the brain active, it's a different part of your...
Part of what they say, and I don't know the validity of this, but is that you sort of form pathways, right? Like when you learn languages, you are forming different pathways that make it easier to learn a language again. And I think it's much easier to do that when you're young.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to learn a language as an adult.
Totally. My mum always told me, "You're a piece of shit, son. I will never trust in you." No, it's not true. It's not true. She never said it. She never said.
Whoa. We're going deep.
No. My mom always said to me that kids' brains are like a sponge, and they just absorb everything. So if you have a baby or a young kid, you should always be teaching them as much as you possibly can, and speaking to them in languages and everything, and they will be absorbing all these things because their mind is so adaptable to many things that it's a lot more likely, or it's a lot easier for them to absorb a language in that age that when we're, say now, I'm in my 30s, and if I was to learn a new language now, I think I'd be fucked. I just don't. Yeah.
But I mean, you already speak what, French as well?
I speak a bit of French. Yep. I get by with it.
Well, you can speak to your partner in French.
Yes, I can. Yeah, not just to her, but we've been. Her and I have been traveling in France heaps of times, and I got a lot of friends from France, and yeah, it's good. I can just talk my way around.
You're so talented, Pepe.
A few things. I think I'm pretty stupid and many other things, to be honest, bro.
Yeah, we all.
Yeah.
So tell me about, because we're both very into martial arts.
Yeah.
So, and we've talked about this before in terms of boxing in Mexico and stuff, and how passionate you are about it, and how important it is to the culture. How did you get into martial arts?
I got into martial arts. Shit, I don't even know how I got into them, man. It's just exciting to watch martial arts. I guess my first path into exploring the martial arts was probably what most people find. Just your first contact with it is when you see somebody getting knocked the fuck out on TV, and you're like, "Whoa, that was scary, but kind of cool. Like, how did he do that?" And then the next show, and you hear the commenters guy going off about it, and all the crowd is going crazy. I mean, in a country like Mexico, as you would know, we produce some of the world's greatest boxing champions that the world has ever seen. And it's hands down one of the, if not the most successful sport that Mexico has shown to the world, is boxing. Seriously.
Yeah,
it is
very good. Very, very good.
The striking is next level. So there's a culture about it. I always find it really exciting to watch and to follow it, and it's always there on telly, and you just, you get to know the personalities of the fighters, and you hate some, you love some. But at the end of the day, you love the game. You love just watching the sport. And then I have a very good friend here, my friend Colin. He set up a little garage in his house in Mount Albert in Auckland. And in this garage, in his flat, he built his own dojo.
Wow.
Much like here, but, a dojo. It was like this kind of space, and he had the rubber mats.
Yep.
And he put there a heavy punching bag and a set of weights, and he had a set of pads and the gloves and wraps and everything. And I just walked in going, "Oh, what's this?" I mean, we would usually just like go there in his lounge, and we'd just be like smashing beers all afternoon watching UFC.
Yep.
So we would still do that.
So when was this, time-wise?
Probably about 5 years back.
Sure.
5, maybe 6 years back.
Yeah.
Then he said to me, "Why don't you come to the garage, and I'll show you a few combinations in the pads." And I think I was probably half drunk. It's going, "Yeah, whatever."
We're always half drunk at the start.
Yeah. So I said, "Yeah, let's fucking do it, man. I'm gonna hit hard." And I never imagined how exhausting it was going to be, and how I would come into contact with it, because I've always been a really peaceful person, minus the odd schoolyard scrap, in school, which is to be expected, you're at school. So we were in his garage, and he puts the pads on, and I just wrap my hands with these things, and I was like, what, do I really need these things? I'm just gonna like punch something under. So puts the gloves on my hands, and he goes, okay, go. This is the jab. Go 1, and then 2, and then 3, and this is gonna be 4, and then you do some uppercuts, and then we're doing it, and then he tells me to put this like in a bit of a sequence together, and then that's a combination of punches, and I do that, and I realize how fucking tired I am, and it's not even been 40 seconds gone past. I'm like, holy shit! Like, how can you go for a whole round of doing this, and the pads are not punching me? I mean, this is got to be taken into consideration. You're punching pads; they're not doing anything back to you. So when you think about it, with the people that are doing it professionally, or not even professionally, but in a competitive level, they are getting hit back by something, and I cannot describe how fucking tiring that would be. I've never been in a fight myself on the ring, but I've been training martial arts and boxing for a while now. Yeah, you've been training.
You're pretty nifty.
Oh well,
you got a good little Mexican hook on you.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate you saying that.
Pepe and I hit pads together sometimes. I actually almost broke my back last weekend.
Oh, did you?
Well, I was not last weekend, the week before we were hitting pads, and I was curled over for a week.
Damn.
Something seized up, and I couldn't stand up straight.
It's aging. It's called aging. I think you're...
None of that talk.
But with martial arts, I think my first incursion properly with martial arts was with Muay Thai. Muay Thai is the national sport of Thailand, and one time about 4 years ago, I went on a trip to Thailand, and I visited to this island.
You won a trip to Thailand?
Sorry?
You won a trip to Thailand?
No. I went. I went to this trip to Thailand, and I spent 2.5 weeks in an island called Koh Phangan, which I love. It's my happy place, man. That region in Thailand is amazing. You and I should go there together sometime and hit the pad.
Yeah, we should.
So I signed up for this Muay Thai camp over there, and it was crazy good, because adding to the exercise of punching and weaving, bobbing, and moving your feet, you're kicking, and you're throwing your elbows, and you're throwing your knees. So Muay Thai is generally regarded as the art of the 8 limbs, because in Muay Thai, it's not only legal to use your elbows and knees, it's encouraged. Like, you're supposed to use those to your advantage, and it is such a violent sport. It's gotta be said. Like, it's very violent. It's really aggressive, but it's at the same time really. It's about controlling yourself. It's about projecting your energy in the right way, and to time yourself. To know in your body and to know how far you can push it, and that's what I really really like about it. It is exhausting. I mean, just to give you an idea, the first week that I trained Muay Thai in Thailand, I was coming back from a European trip, and I spent some time in France, Spain, and Czech Republic, and I was drinking beer like a fish, and I was eating everything that was on my path. So within 3 weeks, I probably put on about 10 kilos. Seriously, 3 weeks, and that's possible. I'm telling you, it is possible. I did it.
You're crazy.
And I went to Thailand in the first week of training Muay Thai. I lost 7 kilos alone in 1 week. Wow. And that's everything. The climate in Thailand is really hot.
Yeah,
I was training like 4 hours each day. First training, I was vomiting. Straight up.
Really?
Yeah. Within an hour, I was vomiting. Some of the trainers were just cracking up, laughing at me. I guess I've seen it before.
Yeah.
But then I was back again, and shit. I mean, I came back to New Zealand after 2.5 weeks in Thailand, skinnier than when I left, and a lot more, I suppose, in a good shape. I felt more athletic, flexible, just able to do shit. It felt good, healthy.
Were you doing football prior? Because I imagine you've been doing football since you're.
Oh yeah, for a while. Yeah.
So you kind of were already somewhat into fitness prior to starting martial arts, but then it
yes. But martial arts. telling you, football, sure, you have to be fit. There's a lot of running about, and it's a very physical game. But martial arts, man, it's just so formal. It's so demanding, you know. I am by no means a professional. I just want to clarify that to anyone. I'm an enthusiast.
Hobbyist.
I'm a hobbyist, exactly. But I mean, you and I, we know people that train in the gym that we train, that these guys dedicate their lives 100%, like Israel Adesanya,
Shane Young, Brad
Riddell, all these names that people are already hearing in an international stage.
Yes.
And these guys are the ones that we should be giving like glory and credit and everything. But isn't it good to just go and train, you know, just hit pads and learn from them, or learn from the people that train them?
I tell you what, man, like we go to a gym called City Kickboxing, which is run by a guy named Eugene Beerman. And like, we're so lucky, man.
Oh, fuck yeah, man.
Like, we have Israel Adesanya, who's this like amazing kickboxer who's just gone to MMA. Probably one of the hottest, if not the hottest prospect. A lot of people are talking about him at the moment.
He's going to be a world champion.
Yeah.
So he's going to be getting that belt one day.
He taught us Thursday night. You know, you're learning combos from him. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy good. We're so lucky.
So very, very lucky. So yeah, well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is like probably a good time to segue into the future, and because one thing that I think is very underrated about yourself, and I don't know if you rate yourself in this, but your photography is fucking off the chain.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll bring up some stuff when I do the edit, so people can have a little gander at some of your work. But really cool, and you write these little bios, you know, these little descriptions that are amazing as well. And is that something that you reckon you're just gonna, is this a hobby, is just like a side thing to your DOP stuff, or is it something that you explore further? And
yeah, well, I've always had a love for photography. You know, I suppose composing images. That's kind of what got me into doing formal camera work. And it's something that is, I hope, is never going to die. Like my interest in shooting stills photography. There's something that I really like about it, that is, you know, when you're filming a video, you have a moving person or subject in front of you, and you can ask questions, or you can describe in one shot what they're doing with motion, or with all this. You can make use of techniques of moving a camera, or putting it somewhere, or putting it in a crane, or putting on this gimbal or a slider.
These are all different kind of things you can...
Yeah, like mount a
tripods.
Camera on. But with stills photography, you have one frame to tell the story. Just one frame. And that's a challenge in itself, you know? That's why I treasure it so much. And it's also very accessible. Like, it's really... I really like the fact that a lot of people can appreciate photography. A lot of people can just see an image and just go like, that looks beautiful. That looks really nice. Some others will find it more like, they'll give you a more passionate description of like, oh my God, can you see how the rule of thirds is so properly applied into that composition, and that backlight is making the image just, like, shine, you know? Some others will just see it and just be like, wow, that looks really nice. But whatever it is, the fact that photography is so easy to show to people, and it's usually, I don't know, it's just simple to present. That makes it very, very almost democratic. Like, everyone can enjoy it.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody can just have a go at it too. We're all carrying a camera in our phones.
Well, that's a funny thing, right? Like I'll take Instagram photos and I'm like, yeah, likes, you know. But it's interesting that photography in the past, because I mean, when we were in high school, phones didn't have cameras.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And now we're here.
And the sick cameras in your phone.
You have amazing cameras. I wonder what that means for photography. I wonder if
it's more of a democratic thing now. Everybody has access to it.
Well, I wonder if more people are going to take it as a passion, or whether the whole art form becomes distorted.
Well, that just depends on who people are, really. I met this guy one time, Stuart. I forget his last name, but he's if you ever get the chance to follow him on Instagram, his account is Peace in 10,000 Hands. And this guy went around the world shooting with Huawei telephones.
Wow.
Yeah, and the cool thing about these phones, and I don't want to make this a fucking commercial for Huawei, but they're pretty sick phones for cameras. They have 2 lenses, and one of the lenses, it shoots only the monochrome images in black and white. The other lens shoots full spectrum of color images. And he went around the world photographing people with only the telephone. And all the editing that he would do in his pictures was done inside the phone.
Wow.
And I would love for you to see some of these photos sometime.
I'll bring it up when we over this as well.
This dude, I'm sure the phone is really good. The software is amazing. But if you don't have the sensitive eye to identify something in the street, you know, like a girl playing in a fountain or somebody selling cigarettes in the street, and I don't know, or a little dramatic moment, I think that's what makes a photographer. The fact that you can identify a scene, the fact that you can just see something and be like, that's a story right there, and I can just take one photo and tell you the story in an interesting composition. Sure, we all carrying a camera in your phones, but can you get it at the right moment or identify what a right moment is? You know, that's what makes it a bit interesting.
Yeah, and what I, as an editor that works with you, find interesting, and it was very prominent on this project we're about to start working on, is I've never had footage come in with a big line of fucking JPEGs stills like on top of the footage, so you go back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know many other people that do that.
Yeah. I take a lot of photos.
Yeah, well, most people are like, I just take a still from,
you
know, but yeah, you really get into that.
Yeah,
and
man, I love photos.
And it's really cool, man. It's really, really cool.
Well, thanks.
So, do you want to do more of that?
I am certain that I will never stop doing it.
Yeah.
I will never stop taking photographs. My whole life, I'm going to take photos until the day that I'm die. I'm going to be doing camera work, hopefully, or just telling stories. And this is what I'm in this game for. So if all goes well, I'm just going to continue for many years.
And so, being in New Zealand quite a long time now, and although it's the best country in the world.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Granted. Are you getting bored? Do you want to go?
No, I don't want to. I'm not getting bored, but I'm not opposed to exploring other places. Europe would be quite an amazing place to spend time in.
Yeah, we're getting a bit of that itch. So.
Yeah.
Let's go to Europe.
You know what? Just recently with this, just want to tell to the audience that we're working in this project called Touching Gloves, and we're going to be working together in this martial arts documentary that I recently was in Mexico for filming. And I met all these fantastic boxers and people from the community in my hometown that if it had not been for this documentary or this project or my love for boxing, I would have never met them before. And it was great. And I really enjoyed working in my hometown. And it sounds weird. I just never done it before because I graduated from uni and then I came to New Zealand. I was working here straight up. The first time that I worked in the film industry or making films in Mexico was just a few weeks back when I was there. And shit, I really enjoyed it, man. I could do with some more of that, to be honest. There's a lot of stories in Mexico to be told. So I'm hoping it's not the last time. So
would you relocate there?
No. I mean, I don't...
Is it the danger?
No, it's not the danger, and that's a good point to talk about. But it is more the opportunities. You know, I feel like right here, I am building something that is good, and I'm networking with some really good people like yourself and many other people that we work close to a lot of the time, and it just feels good. It's not just about the people you work with. You wanna hang out with people that are good at their jobs, but also that you actually like spending time with.
You gel with.
Oh fuck, man! And
so
if you end up like
spending
10 hours with somebody on set, or 12 hours in an edit suite, you want to make sure that the guy or the girl next to you is not an asshole. You want to, or if he's an asshole, at least one that you can laugh with. You know, it happens. So, I'm not sure. I'm not saying that I will never relocate to Mexico. I'm just saying within the near future, it's not part of the plan. Then again, I'm not one to make many plans
No.
I always kind of live within the next 5 minutes and what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah,
That's just me.
I'm fucking terrible at that. I like look at fucking 10 years,
That is.
you know, like, and that's
what it is.
well, it can be disadvantageous for sure.
You know, it's interesting now you mentioned the danger in Mexico. I mean, as a lot of people are aware of, Mexico in the last 12 years, it became very well known for the drug trade.
Yes.
And the drug trade, it's a very profitable business, but it's also a very violent business. Very risky. And I have to say, in my own hometown, in my own fucking backyard, man, like it was just really sad and at the same time incredible to see the transition from being Saltillo, my hometown, one of the most, how can I put it? I mean, Saltillo was famous because it was uneventful. You know, it's like, well,
sleepy
nothing,
town.
Yeah, nothing ever happens in this town. It's always the same. We always do the same things.
That border proximity.
Yeah, but yeah, well, exactly. We're only like 3 hours away from the US. But and then it just went from the drug cartels are taking over, and from being the uneventful town is becoming really eventful for the wrong reasons. Now we're finding like dead bodies hanging from a bridge. Now we're finding dismembered bodies on the road. We're finding people with messages stabbed into their chest and getting picked up by forensic people, and it's really grim, man. It's a really grim reality, and it was more so maybe about 5 years ago. It really peaked. It was like top of the roll, man. It was really, really, really bad.
You think it's gone down?
It's gone down now. At least in my hometown,
right.
I can speak from my hometown. It's gone down.
Sure.
Older towns, it's still going off, and it's such a complicated matter, man. Like I don't know where to even start explaining it. I mean, the different factions of drug cartels are fighting each other for territory. At the same time, they have to fight with the Marines and the military, the police.
Just violence.
But a lot of the police are in certain cartels' payrolls as well. It's a very corrupt country.
Yeah.
And one of the things that pisses me off the most about this whole situation is the position that the United States government always takes about it.
Yep.
On it. Like, since governments from George Bush to Obama to now Trump, they're always pointing their fingers, going like, the Mexicans are bringing their gun violence, they're bringing their narcotics culture into the United States, they're contaminating our border.
Drugs.
Bro, well, it's really simple. I'm not even an economist, and I can tell you it is a market that works in supply and demand, right? And 90% of the cocaine that goes through Mexico ends up in the United States because they're buying the whole thing. They fucking love coke. And they just keep buying it and using it and using. The minute they stop buying it, there's not going to be anybody to sell it. Or, there's not going to be any point in getting it because nobody's buying it. So they're pointing the fingers at the Mexicans, going, you guys are making money out of contaminating our people. You guys are bringing violence to our towns. And yet it is most of the weapons that the Mexicans are fighting these wars with, they come from the United States.
That's so fucked up.
Because without the weapon market, their economy would just collapse. So look it up, man. The biggest industry in the United States.
Complex.
Exactly. It's the manufacturing of weapons is what keeps them. And if it wasn't for that, really the whole country would just sink down. It's always in their best interest that there is a belly conflict in the world.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. Actually, Australia is looking at moving into more arms manufacturing, which I actually think is a good thing for New Zealand. But that's my personal
I don't know,
military strategy kind of mind. But no, with Mexico, I mean, there's a lot to be said for, and there's a lot of people that are proponents of this, but the legalization, or at least decriminalization of drugs, and not just marijuana, all drugs.
Everything. Fuck yeah, I reckon go for it.
Because of what that creates. And it's not a problem in the United States where the legislation is made. It's a problem where the supply comes from, obviously, in Mexico. And it's horrible.
Well, it's a chain. I mean, for a start, it doesn't even begin... The chain doesn't begin from Mexico. It comes from further down south, like countries like Bolivia and Peru. They're producing a lot of coke because they have the perfect
Colombia,
climate.
yeah.
Have the perfect climate for these things to develop. And in all reality, man, these countries, they need jobs. They need productions of jobs.
Well, they need money, yeah.
Totally. And they're keeping a lot of people employed because they're producing these substances. So legalizing them is going to provide everyone with a safe job as opposed to being scared in the field going, oh my God, somebody's going to come and shoot me up because I'm producing this.
Well, that's interesting because I don't know if it would remain globalized though. Like, so say, obviously each country would have its own thing,
Sure.
and there would be users in every country. But
Yeah.
I don't know if there would still be that chain if America per se was to make drugs legal, which is just never going to happen in America.
They're taking the right steps towards some drugs.
Well, marijuana,
Yeah.
and there's a massive gap between the legalization of marijuana
and cocaine
and
or LSD, anything else, yeah.
Yeah, my personal sort of stance on it, I think, is I think stuff like meth is horrible. It's absolutely, like, it just fucks you. And
Yep.
what I've seen on it, you have dopamine receptors in your brain, and every time that you take it, you're cooking them, you're overloading them, and you're frying them, and you literally stop yourself from ever reaching that point. So you get this massive euphoric high, and then every other time that you do it, you start to get lower and lower, and you're burning out your receptors.
And you build that tolerance, right?
But you stop yourself from being able to achieve the same sense of happiness,
Yeah.
you know, and that's just like forever, because you fucked yourself. And that's at least what I've been told, and I don't know how correct that is, but I don't think it's far from the truth if it's not.
Yep.
And so, you know, and it destroys lives and stuff like that. And so things like that, you know, I like to see police resource preventing that from happening. And it's unfortunate because of everything that we just talked about, right?
Right.
But there's never going to be like a utopian solution, I don't think. I think you just have to manage things. And so,
Sure.
in my mind, you know, things like LSD, magic mushrooms, psychedelics, like, there's not really any harm in that. And there's actually a lot of, in terms of psychobilin and stuff like, so I fucking probably butchered that word. Active ingredient in magic mushrooms can be used to treat PTSD.
Oh yeah, the psilocybin.
Yeah, that's the one. And like nicotine addiction, and you know, there's really good like evidence about that. And we're not making evidence-based policy, and that's what worries me. You know, and when the United Nations, for example, is saying drugs is not a criminal thing; it's a health thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no one's really paying attention to that because politicians have spent so long vilifying, you know, the use of drugs.
It's because it comes from a really morally grounded train of thought. You know what I mean? Like it's not, they're not deciding that upon evidence too much, but upon morals.
I think politicians are always worried about upsetting the voting public.
Yeah.
And there's this weird dichotomy between politicians and the public about who influences who. And, you know, like, does the public frame the conversations and the politicians react off that? Or do the politicians frame the conversation and the public reacts on that?
Sure.
And so that kind of calls a relationship really
popular.
interesting. Yeah, and that's the whole thing, I think, between a lot of that is that people are so worried about upsetting their voter base.
Yeah. But you have to take into account the experience of other countries. Like, what has happened before when this thing that you're talking about, legalizing all drugs, or decriminalizing them, rather, you know?
It's been done in some countries, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, like you see it happened in Portugal.
Yeah,
and Portugal had a great amount of drug addiction, and through drug addiction, a lot of the criminal rates went way up. Since they began, well, they decriminalized all drugs, all substances, not just weed, everything, and they started treating drug addiction as like you said, as a health issue, as opposed to a criminal issue. You know, put it more to be handled by health professionals as opposed to cops. And as a result of that, the drug addiction levels have dropped, and also the criminal indexes have also dropped. You know, the result has been really, really good. There's less people in jail, less people taking drugs, and more people being educated as to what these substances are going to do to you. I mean, yeah,
that's the dream, man. You know, like. And it's unfortunate that it's so hard to achieve that. But I mean, Portugal can do it. Like, why can't other countries? Well, it made me, you know, it'd be interesting to see how New Zealand goes on this marijuana referendum.
I reckon within the next 5 years, we're going to see it legalized recreationally.
Well, that's New Zealand's gonna, to my understanding,
Yeah.
part of the coalition agreement. So Greens wanted to just legalize cannabis, and New Zealand First wanted to make it a referendum.
Right.
So we're gonna, and that's why Chloe Swarbrick had a bill that got shot down in the first reading, which was just more an extensive version of, made sense everything she was saying, but it was a more extensive version of what was being proposed in terms of terminally ill people and access to.
It's crazy, eh? What weed can do for really sick patients.
It's very, very silly. The vilification of cannabis if you look at it, it was to vilify the hippies. That was the war on drugs.
Yeah.
There was huge political reasons for it.
Yeah.
America framed the conversation, and then everyone else sort of, these other Western powers, since America was the hegemon, sort of followed that suit.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens sort of culturally. And so it was, back in the day to vilify, I think it was the Mexicans. That's where they gave it the name marijuana and stuff like that. And then later
That's
on,
convenient.
they associated it with the hippies, and they started doing this massive crackdowns. And and it was power and money in politics, and that's what sort of framed the conversation about that instead of intelligent discourse. And it's really unfortunate, but we're at a point now where we can have these conversations about it. And
it's infuriating, though, man. I mean,
sure,
I know that's like the big picture of this whole thing, but you know what? I was thinking more in the lines of the marijuana one. A few years back, I was working in one of those reality TV shows of like going after cops, like following cops around. It was called Women in Blue, which was actually kind of fun to work in one of those, just riding a cop car all night. And I was actually put in cop cars with female officers, and we were telling the stories of female officers on the tough jobs that police officers do. And I was seeing every time they would arrest somebody, then they have to take them into the police station, and they have to spend at least an hour doing all this fucking boring ass paperwork. They're just sitting there typing things, corroborating facts. He said, she said this, and then I said this, and then just typing. All the while, this like the person that got arrested is just there in the cell. And sure, like great, like you arrested somebody that was going to beat someone up. You arrested somebody that assaulted somebody or that stole something. When they put handcuffs of somebody rolling a joint in a park, you get the police resource of two people, because they always go in partners. They're going back to the police station, and this kid, 18-year-old kid or whatever, 17-year-old kid, rolling himself a spliff in the park. And that's taking the police resources of two cops writing all these reports because he was lighting up a spliff in a park. Oh my God. And then, all the while real crimes are fucking happening out there. Yeah,
well, cops are, and that's sort of the argument, is that New Zealand police especially are able to exercise quite a lot of discretion when it comes to that sort of thing. So they wouldn't usually, I don't think, put someone in jail or put someone in cells for that, for rolling a spliff. I think there's, maybe you saw otherwise, and maybe that was because they had cameras, and I don't know. I mean, because you wouldn't be able to, there would be no quantifiable evidence on that. But I think there's a really big separation of arguments here. Yeah. There's decriminalization, there's legalization, and we often talk about legalization and the benefits of that. And people talk about how the government could control the industry, and you're getting the money out of getting the money out of black market and putting into. What have you done?
I think I kicked the bottle. It's empty.
Wow. Okay. And so you got your two big things, right? So you got people, all that money that could be saved by the government, but then the decriminalization issue, I think is more important than the legalization issue, because, as you say, you've got police resource, but you've got the court resources and stuff like that as well. There's a massive amount of money that goes into, and the worst part of it all is the cyclical nature of crime. So people get into prison on a drug charge, and then they are indoctrinated into this lifestyle of a prisoner that becomes their sense of identity. They come out, they commit another crime, rehabilitation gets fucked. Like,
prisons are not really places for reforming, are they?
No, well,
they come out a lot worse.
Yeah,
they may be like anecdotal, but I reckon it fucking happens.
No, and I think that's it's absolutely accurate. Because I think in a lot of those environments, that's how you have to survive, is by becoming that. And even if you don't even have that mentality of this is how you have to survive, you just absorb your environment and surroundings, and that becomes the lens in which you see the world. And so keeping people out of prisons on the get-go is really, really important, I think. And so I think there's the fact that I get the legalization argument, kind of like the opposition to it. You don't want to encourage people and there are negative mental health side effects and stuff, but I mean...
It's not for everybody.
No, but also tobacco fucks. Like, you're smoking...
beer, it's like this
no, it's terrible for you.
Yeah.
And it's awful, and if that's legal, then, you know, prohibition's never worked. Ever. It's dumb. It's a dumb fucking concept. But yeah, and so I think what scares me though, and this is what I keep getting reminded of, is that we're the minority. Our opinions, right, in terms of being a progressive, is the minority. We're not the voting majority, and so that's the big disconnect of our sort of generation. And I think there's always been that disconnect because you have the new generation, the older generation, and the new generation that can kind of assess information more objectively, maybe, because you're still young and still learning. Yeah. And being plugged into the internet's really helpful because we don't just get all our news source from a piece of paper. We can explore whatever we want to explore. Yeah. You know, and we get all these numbers and statistics and we can kind of see. And so there's encouraging things of where we might go. Yep. There's very unencouraging, you know, we're in the post-truth, Trump, fucking Putin, Xi Jinping, just, you know, like I've written I'll get you to read it. Yeah. I did a short essay. I was up at 1 a.m, certainly not in any kind of substance. And I was writing like a little short essay about ideologies and critiquing them. Yeah. And just talking about being in a post-truth era and stuff and the failures of ideology. Because I think the moment you subscribe to one thing, Jesus, Pepe.
Whoops.
You can just say you don't like what I'm talking about.
Fucking so bored, man.
No, but anyway, and basically, so it's just a really interesting time, you know. Yep. I went to a public lecture the other day at the University of Auckland. They did this Institute of International Affairs. They had the guy that used to be the director of the Lowy Institute, which is an Australian think tank on international relations. And he was talking about how we're entering now a phase of change. Right. You know, it was the same thing after the Suez Canal. And like the colonialization, everything started to separate away from the main powers and the world entered at a very different stage. Same thing's happening now. Actually, Suez was a mirror coming up as well. But yeah, so what we're seeing is the changing of the global power structure. The United States no longer being the hegemon. Trump made a mockery of the United States system, and it's just indicative of how sick and broken that system is. Putin is a mafioso, you know, he's worth billions of dollars, and it's very scary the way that Russia manipulates information. And Xi Jinping just removed term limits, you know. Wow. Yeah, and he purged the fuck out of the Chinese Communist Party when he got into power. And so you've got these people that are, you know, they're dictators, and the democracy index, so that each country is measured on their scale of democracy. I can't remember who does it, but they're all receding around the world. Yeah, there's a failure of democracy. And
so what next?
Well, I think, and so his sort of thinking on it is that New Zealand. So he was talking about New Zealand and Australia, and I think that's a very good way of thinking about it. He actually put a really interesting point. He'd say New Zealand is strategically, what was the words that he used? Economically vulnerable, but strategically strong.
Why?
Whereas because we're at the corner of the world, so we're economically vulnerable, and Australia is strategically weak, but economically strong. And so he was sort of saying the best way to sort of navigate these waters is to have as many choices available as possible. Yeah. And so this is in regards to like the China and the United States and, you know, New Zealand's and Australia's dealings with both of them, and how do we kind of, which side do we pick? And his sort of theorem was we have to just keep our options open. But I think there's a lot to be said for being in the corner of the world. And there's a lot to be said for being good friends with Australia. And I actually would like New Zealand to adopt a policy of neutrality, so we don't sort of engage in conflicts beyond peacekeeping operations. I think you need to participate in military exercises.
Because was it John Key? Yeah, John Key sent some troops to Afghanistan, didn't he?
So during the John Key government, there was a thawing of international. So there was greater military cooperation between New Zealand and America,
Right.
which is kind of a thawing of the ANZUS. So we had the ANZUS alliance, Australia, New Zealand, United States. When we said "fuck off," we don't want your nuclear ships, we kind of really damaged that, and so America kind of was very affronted by that, and it sort of damaged our relationship with them. But that kind of started to get thawed. I think but there are military exercises in Hawaii, I think it is, that China participates and the United States participates in. There are joint exercises that they will engage in together.
Sure.
I think the South China Sea is probably going to crack off at some point, and things are going to get a bit sour. But that's my biggest worry, is that China and Japan go at it, because in the United States has to kind of get thrown into it.
Wouldn't it be awesome if we just picked our political leaders and teach them all a martial art? And then, maybe not Jacinda, she's pregnant, right?
Let's do martial arts in schools, people.
I saw Jacinda at the mall today. She was there with a baby bump and
Jacinda?
everything. Yeah, Jacinda.
Jacinda's my homegirl.
She's cool. Well, it'd be really cool. One, she has her baby and everything. She's good.
Yeah.
Can teach Jacinda some jiu-jitsu or some... And then all the international conflicts could be solved through...
Jiu-jitsu competitions.
Or MMA. I don't know. If they really fucking go at each other, why not just
Russia's going to be steroided up to shit.
Let
us all steroid up.
Everybody gets steroids.
We've got Pacific Islanders and Maldives, and they are powerful people.
Oh yeah, totally.
They have very powerful people.
Totally.
Junior Fast fighting today.
I know.
Watch it.
That dude is going to be crazy. He's in a 13-0
It's already
record.
been. Shit.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
fuck.
We've been talking for a while.
That's good.
An hour and 17 minutes. Maybe we should wrap this up.
Sure. I got no other plans.
We kind of...
we're going to edit. So.
We've got work to do.
But this is fun, man. I mean, this is fun. I have to say, I like your idea of making a podcast, and I think it's going to go a long way. I guarantee you know a lot of people that are going to give us a lot of really good stories. So I'm expected to see here creative people, interesting people in many fields. Like athletics is one of them. I think
that's the easy one.
At some point, there's going to be fighters here.
Shane Young's probably going to be the next.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's going to be a good story.
I started talking to him for the hero. No, fuck that. No, I'm not going to talk about that. But no, I had a long interview with Shane. I tried to compress into an article, but he had this really cool thing about Māori identity and stuff like that. And so I'm really keen to explore his culture.
Yep.
And so
that's cool. That's cool.
I think Izzy would be a fun one to talk to as well.
Izzy would be great to have in your podcast. Yeah. What about any musicians and you would like to?
I do know some.
Yeah,
I do know some. There's it depends on the prominence and stuff, I suppose. But I don't like just getting celebrities. Fuck that. I'd love to talk to Chloe Swarbrick. And we know Tom Dutton, who worked at NZB.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows her really well, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to have a yarn to her. And then David Farrier and stuff like that. I'm really into what David Farrier's up to at the moment.
That's cool.
He's, because have you seen Tickled?
You should get Sarah Hall.
Sarah Hall?
Oh my God, will she have a story for you? Man, she'll be so good in the podcast.
More than Buddy's story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, that's good, cool. Anyway, instead of talking about people that no one knows,
that's a bit mean.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
I didn't say that, Sarah. It was
Sarah. If you're listening to this, which you're absolutely not going to be doing, please disregard everything Pepe says. No, it's been fun, man. And
hey, thanks for reminding me of Lookman. It's been a good time.
We're gonna keep hanging out for a while now and cut some footage.
I'm going home. I'm not. We have a lot of work to get through.
To do. But yeah, well, thank you very much, Pepe, for coming on. And come back next time, ladies and gentlemen.
Anytime, bro.
Peace.